Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. On today's episode I will be targeting a small wild river in the high Sierras for wild trout. There's a storm moving in, so I will only have a few hours to fish, but I will make the best use of those few hours. I've had a lot of subscribers and viewers alike ask me about these heavily regulated areas on how to target them, and in my opinion the best way to target these small rivers are with micro spoons. In the state of California, we have a lot of these small tributaries water that will be extremely regulated. More times than not, the only way to target these trout are with flies, but in the last few years, in the Japanese market, there's been a great advancement in terms of plugs and spoons. The spoon I'll be using is a Shimano Forest Mew spoon rated for 1.3 gram. I have replaced the treble hooks with a single Mukai barbless Masu hook, and I will be fishing it on spinning gear with a reel loaded with 4-pound Varivis twitching mono. In these small rivers and streams that receive no planted fish, the trout will be on the very small, almost micro size. A large trout in this small stream or river will be about 10 inches. These Japanese spoons are built to be casted upstream and floated down with the current. The shape and design of these spoons will allow me to bounce the bottom and not get hung up compared to the American spoons, which will tend to be built for bigger, faster flowing river and built to be swept across the flow. This is a very small but very beautiful little brown trout. With the Mukai Masu hook, the hooks are extremely sticky and will even stick the smallest of feisty trout, despite it being a single hook. Thanks for playing, little guy. Off you go. So why target these heavily regulated rivers, some of you guys might ask? Well, some of my viewers and subscribers alike had often wondered about what lives in these rivers. More often than not, with a very few exception of some fisheries up north, these wild rivers will contain much smaller but very beautiful wild trout. This is another gorgeous little rainbow trout, and as you guys can see, these single barbless hooks are very efficient at sticking these fish, despite it not being a treble hook. Gear fishing with artificial such as spoons and spinners are often the only way to target these regulated rivers in our state of California. Other than picking up a fly rod and learning to fly fish, this is the most efficient way I have found to target these small wild regulated rivers. My preference with this gear is to always try and work upstream and cast the spoon upstream. These Japanese spoons were developed in the high countries of Hokkaido, Japan to target Iwana, Sakuramasu, and Yamame. However, I have found that in America they are extremely efficient at targeting these small rivers and streams that are heavily regulated, primarily because these spoons were developed in Japan to target heavily regulated areas in Japan as well. Off you go, little guy. A key feature that I will look for in these small streams and rivers are obstructions such as rocks and boulders. These wild trout will gravitate towards structure more than anything else. Another great way to target these small rivers will be with a marabou jig, but for the sake of covering water, a spoon is often my favorite way of quickly finding actively feeding fish. Throughout the years, I have found out that these wild trout are extremely aggressive and will strike these Japanese spoon despite it being almost half or most of their size. This fish was hooked pretty well despite it being almost half the size of the spoon, as a testament to how aggressive these fish can be despite them being on the very tiny wild side. Hopefully this episode helps those of you guys whom are curious about these small wild regulated rivers. I am not a trophy fisherman and neither am I a fan of trophy fish fishing, so therefore when I catch a small trout or so from these small wild regulated rivers, I am as pleased as I would catching a 10-15 pound trout from a giant reservoir. I think these trout are really pretty, so hopefully this episode explains my opinion on how I would target these small rivers. Overall, it was a great day in the high Sierras despite fishing only for a few hours. The storm is moving in fast, and with the storm moving in, I didn't want to get soaked, neither did I want to be caught out here when it is thundering. So therefore, this episode will hopefully help those of you guys who are curious with how to fish these wild regulated rivers and streams without having to pick up a fly rod. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, tight lines, y'all.